Mike and Tom are registered with Steward Partners Global Advisors. Common Sense Finance with Mike Wiginton and Tom Farrell of HL Wiginton Capital Management, an independent investment and financial planning firm in downtown Jasper. Mike is a chartered financial analyst charter holder, and Tom is a certified financial planner professional. They are here to discuss and give their thoughts on current financial and economic matters. Now, with Common Sense Finance, here are Mike and Tom.
Welcome back to another edition of Common Sense Finance. I'm Tom Farrell. This is Mike Wiginton. The title of this podcast is Land Ho. You made that title, not me. And I think this is fitting because now, well, really, anytime there is stock market volatility, which happens a lot, by the way, and or there's perceived stock market volatility on the horizon, a lot of, especially institutional type money managers, will start talking about alternatives, and one of the main alternatives that are turned to is real estate.
Yes. And, a lot of times that's on the heels of an argument that you still hear, which is matter-of-factly wrong. It's just mathematically wrong, is that, well, it's not as volatile. No, that's not true at all. It's not measured. Volatility is not measured.
That's right.
Somebody's heard here the average volume. We talked about this in future podcasts and had it out with all sorts of people. The average volume per my Bloomberg station terminal on Apple is over 55 million shares a day. So that's how many times a day, on average, Apple shares trade. How many times a day does your house sell, or does the office building sell? Okay, it's years and years. So you're not measuring the volatility. So,
right.
So that's just crazy for, and in some cases they are educated people. They shouldn't talk like that because it's just wrong. I often believe. Do they actually believe that? But no question, real estate is an asset class that, especially the direct form, as opposed to buying a real estate investment trust, which is like a stock. Buying a piece of real estate is a romantic idea amongst people. They have total myths about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard that plenty of times from your clients.
Oh, yeah. And, a lot of people, and talking about individual real estate investors, and I know there's maybe some other things you want to talk about on this, but do they really know what their return is? I mean, there may be some savvy people out there that know how to calculate that return and have an accurate number, but do most people, in your experience, know what their return is on real estate?
Not even close. And I'm not saying they couldn't figure it out, but that's not the way they handle it from a practical standpoint. They pay X for it, and they can kind of keep up with that. And then they said, I sold it for X, some years later, and they look at the two, and they don't take into consideration often any of their expenses over the course of that time. That's number one. They don't take into consideration any value on the time over that holding period. And then, so most of the time, they won't even sit down to calculate, how much in percentage terms, not dollar terms, percentage terms did I make? And then go back and say, hey, would you pull up the S&P 500 and see over that same holding period, how did it perform? If I'd have just owned, which you have to do nothing, by the way, right? You don't have to turn in, pay any light bills, get sued,
fix toilets.
That's right. And by the way, that I'm an advocate of real estate.
Huge real estate guy.
I love.
Yeah.
I'm just. I like real estate.
I know you are.
I like, and I mean in its own forms. Here where we're.
I'm the same way. I just want to make people maybe don't realize what they're getting, or maybe there's a false sense of that's a. But because if you look at real estate returns of whatever class you want, what is a condo or whatever,
right.
And then you compare that to stock market returns over a long period of time, I would venture to say that the stock market has outperformed, and it's probably not even close.
You could go cherry pick.
Sure.
Sometimes where, and I think of the beach and here on the lake has been a crazy, as environment. And you can cherry pick some times where you were active, bought and sold, in a fairly short order of time, and you were on the fairly significant upturn of the curve, and
Right.
and you did real well, and that's good, and so, but the problem with measuring like that is, and that's a real thing for that person. They experience that, and I'm not suggesting otherwise. But you do cherry pick. Cherry picking's about, because I could go pick a penny stock that which
Sure.
we would never invest in, that went from a penny to $1.50, and say, well, what about that percentage?
Right.
I beat you. Okay, and so cherry picking is not in terms of in a sophisticated way, of accurate way of calculating returns. Not the way we do that. But I'll tell you, in our area where we are, when I think about people that have been pummeled, all right, and this was always held out as you can't go wrong, is timberland owners.
Yeah.
Okay, and there was an event here where one of the giant industrial users of timber of timber products, International Paper, closed their mill down, and I had this conversation with people in the foresters for a long time. It's like, ever since then, the value of trees to the landowner, has just plummeted. What the landowner
Right.
gets. If you think that you're planting trees, you're going to go buy land and plant trees, and a lot of people did. I mean, they would say that's my retirement. That just got scorched.
Yeah.
And so, on something that you would think, and for a long time, it was a staple, but it was only, by all accounts, on all the sorts of discount rates that I've studied on timberland holdings over the years, for a normal person, not a person working inside timber investments, okay? Not a buyer of wood. Let's
Talking
say.
about an individual.
An individual, I mean, it was a 5% type yield at best, you
Right.
know? And so with what's going on now, and you would have some people say, well, have you seen what raw land prices have done in the last 3 years? Okay, yeah, but you're cherry picking again.
Right.
If I go back to that guy that's held it for 20 years versus the S&P 500 has been pummeled. Now, again, there is another argument that says, oh, well, look at the use that I get, the personal utility I get from, and that's great and wonderful. If you really get that, then great.
Yeah.
That's on a case-by-case basis, and it's certainly, you wouldn't, in my mind, use that as an argument for investing in that property if you just, as an investment class versus, say, the S&P 500.
And
the returns just haven't been there.
You know, we talked about this yesterday and kind of got a little bit of an argument about it. But, you know, a lot of what, and this is, you got guys, famous guys putting podcasts out all the time talking about real estate.
Yes.
And one of their things is, and I agree to a certain point on this, is, you know, hey, you go out and you borrow as much money as you can, buy an apartment building or buy a house or duplex, whatever, and let the tenants make the payment for you. And at the end of the day, you're going to own this thing free and clear, and you would have invested very little money in it.
Okay, so see right there, it is the case, and it's always been the case. This is just a mathematical certainty. It hasn't. The real return in real estate is through leverage, borrowed money. And what you just said, and I would tell you, I would advocate that for my 25 and 27-year-old sons, okay? That if they have good credit, go out, and if you can buy like rental properties, duplexes, so forth, and have the tenants pay that off, okay? Mm-hmm. There is a time commitment to that, but that is a way, because you can control a property with very little down, just like you said, and control it over a period of time, have the tenants pay the debt off, and that does work. That model does work. But you know how many people, and these are grown people, that the kind of people that have financial resources, and they are all plugged into debt's bad, all debt, and they shouldn't buy real estate. In my opinion, they shouldn't buy real estate. Their returns are probably going to be better off, in my opinion, based on my long observation and work in this industry, better off in the S&P 500 versus if I said, hey, keep your money, borrow every penny if you can. You might have to put on investment property depending on the environment. Most banks will make you put some level of down payment down. You might even go borrow the down payment, all right? But leverage is where the return in real estate is, and if you're opposed to that, you probably should reconsider real estate.
Yeah, and the other thing that we talked a little bit about was, you know, a lot of people, they'll go to their local bank and I'm going to borrow X amount of money. Okay, what's that money for? I'm going to go over here and buy this duplex or apartment building. Okay. If you went over, the same person went over and said, hey, I want to borrow this amount of money. What are you going to do with it? Well, I'm going to go invest it in the stock market. That's not going to happen. So, I think it's easier for people to use leverage, obviously, maybe not easier, maybe it's the only way to use leverage to kind of build some wealth is through real estate, which does make sense.
I agree with you. It does make sense, and it's just interesting to me that one of the ways that where real estate does make sense is that most people you run into are kind of opposed to that. They're reluctant to do that.
Right.
And so, and not all debt's the same. Okay, credit cards debt's not the same as debt to finance a productive asset. I've used it like a service truck that you'd put in that you keep running 7 days a week working on Caterpillar equipment that's paying itself off.
Mm-hmm.
The same would go for apartments or duplexes. Putting it, having a productive asset and using debt to finance that. It's just a financially it's a just a financial fact. Some people have kidded me about it. You said financial fact. What does that mean? And you say financial fact. Well, it's not my opinion.
You said it several times.
Well, I may say it a few more times. I like saying it.
But at the end of the day, though, if you go out and you do that, you borrow the money, you buy the duplex, you say you pay it off, your renters pay it off over 10 or 15 years, whatever your term is. What's your rate of return? It's probably not going to be, I would argue it's probably not going to be, and I know we're speaking our business here, but it's probably not going to be better than the stock market returns.
Well, so
if we look back over history of those type transactions.
I think that if you do your homework, if you know what you're doing, you do stand to make higher gains, higher returns with direct assets. And if we're talking about nominal returns, I made 17%. I'm making up numbers, so just hold your horses compliance. I'm making up numbers solely for the sake of example. If you say, okay, I made 17% a year, if you know how to calculate returns, okay, and we've already called that into serious question, okay. But if you you don't even have all your data. But let's just say that one person that doesn't exist comes in here and they've got all their data. Okay, well, and it's accurate, right? We'll help you calculate your return, and you made 17% a year over 10 years. Versus, the stock market only went up 9% a year over that 10-year period of time. Now your question is, okay, in risk-adjusted returns, which is a real thing, what did you have to do to get that 17%?
Right.
But I think with direct-held assets that there is the opportunity to make a higher rate of return than on passive assets where I just own the stock market and do nothing, okay? Or people wouldn't do it, or the developers wouldn't. There has to be that payoff, all right, that opportunity for gain, or people wouldn't do it. But you've got to give up something to get that, and most people don't want to do it, not qualified to do it.
They don't calculate their time that they invested in
That's right.
managing these or doing repairs or whatever the case may be.
That's right.
So,
but I am an advocate of real estate because there is the potential to make a higher return. The potential to make higher returns. B, to get into those investments with a small amount of money if you use leverage correctly. But you got to do your homework.
That's the main point of this. You got to know what you're getting into,
yes,
and know what to expect. So, what's that? You have anything else?
That'll do it for me.
That's it. Thank you.
Controversy. You get high. Does your daddy cry? Controversy. 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 Do I believe God? Or do I believe me? controversy.